Morning.
Good morning, Doug.
Best for the weather, I see.
Yeah, it's cold in this apartment.
All right. So today we are on 22, I think. 22? Yeah, 22A. About 9 lines from the top, 10 lines from the top. And we're kind of in the middle of the discussion about how many readers or how many Torah readers there should be, how many sections there should be. And we're talking about Rosh Chodesh, and now let's see. Where should we start exactly? All right, let's start from the Tanya, which is the 8th line down. We have a brisa. Hakar b'Torah li'ifos mishlosha psukim. A reading, when we read in the Torah, each section should not be less than 3 verses. Read Marla. And we have a discussion about that. Rav Amar Doleg, Shmuel Amar Posek. But what happens if you don't have enough? You have two portions to divide among 5 verses, so you don't have 3 on either side. So Rav says you skip backwards. So you read the first 3, and then you repeat the third one and read the last 2 in the second section. Okay, so you skip backwards so that each part of the 5 verses has 3. Okay, but Shmuel says posek. No, what you do is you split the middle verse into 2. So you read 2.5 and 2.5. So that's like that qualifies to him as reading 3 for each one. Rav Omar Doleg, my Talmud Omar Posek. Why does Rav say skip backwards and don't split the middle verse like Shmuel? Because he has the view that you can't make up your own verse divisions. If the original Torah did not split a verse, then you can't split a verse. Like, it could mean that you're not allowed to, or it could mean that it doesn't qualify as a full verse. So it wouldn't. Either way, either that's inappropriate, or it doesn't even work. That would be that 2.5 would be close enough to 3. Rav said that would work. But Shmuel says, well, wait. So what does Shmuel say? Like, does he argue with this? Doesn't everybody agree that no splitting a verse in the middle? Rabbi Chananya, Kara, Rabbi Chananya, the Kara apparently is a title. He's like the expert on reading the Torah. He says, I was very careful. It hurt me a lot, maybe, that Rabbi Chanina he wouldn't allow me to divide a verse in 2 unless I was teaching children, right? Because that's not Torah reading, that's teaching. That's a different function. So, this. So does Shmuel disagree with this statement that that for Torah he does say that he's very particular for Torah reading, that you couldn't split a verse. So Gemara says Hasam Tamamai, in the case of the teaching the children, what's the reason you're allowed Mishum Delesher? You can't do it any other way, right? Like, you're not going to be an effective teacher if you try to translate the whole verse. Then they'll miss the nuances. They'll forget. If they're children, they'll forget the beginning by the time you get to the end. So here too, when we're reading the Torah and there's only and you have this issue of 5 verses and having to split it into 2 sections of 3, there's no other way to do it. But there is a way to do it. Rav had a way to do it, right? Go back, skip backwards, and read the middle verse twice, and then you'll have 3 and 3. Because just as we saw at the beginning, yesterday's daf, the beginning of the parak, that you have to be concerned about people who come in the middle or leave in the middle. So what are they going to think? So here too, somebody who comes in the middle, he'll think he will. Let's say you come in the middle of the. Let's say you come in for the second aliyah, and so they're starting from the 3rd verse. So you'll think, they must have read only 2 verses in the first section. I guess you can read 2 verses in one section, and no, and that's sufficient, which isn't the case. So Gemara asks Meisvei, so that's why skipping backwards wouldn't work, because somebody could make that mistake. Okay, Meisvei. So they asked, Parsha Shel Shisha Psukim Karinos Bishnai. If you have a section, a paragraph of 6 verses, then 2 people can read it, 3 and 3. But if it's only a paragraph of 5 verses, then it has to be read as one, as one section, right? Because you can't split it into 3 and 3. Kara Rishon Shlosha. What if the first reader read 3 already, 3 verses of the 5? Hasheni Kari Shnami Parsha Zu V'Echad Miparsha Acheres. So the second person has only 2 verses left. He has to supplement it with a 3rd verse from a different paragraph. Let's say from the next paragraph. Some say that it's not sufficient to add on only 1 verse from the next paragraph. You have to add on 3. Because of the other rule that you can't read less. If you're starting a new paragraph, you have to read at least 3 verses. Okay. So if it's proper to do like Rav and Shmuel said, that you could actually split the 5-verse paragraph. Lamandi Amar Doleg Nidlog. So according to Rav, so like, why are you resorting to having to go into the next paragraph? You can skip backwards. And according to Shmuel, Lamandi Amar the Posek Nisak. And according to Shmuel, it says you can split the middle verse. Then let them split. So why does this brisa say you have to continue into the next paragraph? So the brisa Shani Hasam to Afshar Bahachi. In that brisa, it's like you have the possibility of moving on to the next paragraph. So in other words, like if you're talking about Monday and Thursday mornings when you read the Torah, so continuing further into the week's parsha, it's not a problem, right? So you'll read into the next paragraph. So what? It's still part of the reading from the next Shabbos, right? It's topical. But if you're talking about reading like for a public fast, okay, where you're reading a specific paragraph and it's not relevant to read from another paragraph, then you would have to split it. Tanchum said, Halacha ki yeshamrim. We rule like the yeshamrim, the some say that we just saw, that you can't, if you start a new paragraph, you have to read into it at least 3 verses. You can't stop after 1 or 2 verses. Okay. Then Rav Tanchum also said, just as you can't start a new paragraph and read less than 3 verses from it, you also can't stop short just before the end of a paragraph, 1 or 2 verses before the end. If you're stopping short, it has to be at least 3 verses before the end of the paragraph. Pshita. So that's like that should be obvious. Like, what would be the difference between reading a shorter than 3 verse beginning of a paragraph or reading a shorter than 3 verse end of a paragraph? So why is it obvious? Hashto ma atchalta dekamekil tanakama machmire yeshom tanakama machmire yeshomrim. We saw about the beginning of a paragraph that this others say opinion is more strict than the first time, right? Where the first one said, yeah, you can read into the next paragraph. You just need to supplement. You only need 1 more verse. You can supplement with 1 verse from the next paragraph. But the alternate opinion is no, you have to be stricter than that. So shiur the machmir kanakama lokol shein the machmir yeshomrim. So the leaving out, stopping short at the end of the paragraph, before the end of the paragraph, which the Tanakhama would say you cannot do, right? Because that's apparent from the Tanakhama's position. So who's going to be less stringent than that? So the answer is, so what was the reason that the Tanakhama, that the first Tana said that you can't start 2 verses before the end of a paragraph, because people coming in late will think that that's no, sorry, the at the beginning. Sorry. Why would the Tanakama say you can't just read two verses from the beginning of the paragraph and then start at the third verse for the next one? Because people will come in late. They think that that it's okay to do that. So, but who's going to leave early? Like like nobody's going to leave in the middle of Torah reading. That must be very unusual. So we're not concerned about what might people think if they leave early. Like if you're starting two psukim before the end, two verses before the end of the paragraph, everybody is going to still be there when you read into the next paragraph to complete the third verse, right? But the other way around, there definitely people are going to be coming in late. So Kamashmalan, so it tells us that no, we don't take that position. We are concerned about both people coming in late and leaving early, and that's why we have to be careful about the 3-verse rule on both ends. So according to the Tanakama, why are you not permitted to stop short of the end, less than 2-3 verses before the end, because people might leave and in the middle, and they might think, oh, he's only going to read, the next person is only going to read 2 verses to the end of the paragraph. So this is the flip side of what we said before. At the beginning a paragraph and reading less than 3 verses should also be prohibited, because people might come in the middle and they won't know that this section began in the previous paragraph and contained more than 3 verses. They'll think, oh, we stopped after only 2 verses in this paragraph. Looks like they only read 2 verses in this section. So Gemara answers, Amre manda aile shiule shayil. Because like somebody who's coming into shul, he's gonna express his surprise to his neighbor and say, hey, what happened? Did they only read 2 verses from this paragraph? And his neighbor will say, who was there before? No, we started in the previous paragraph and we read more than 3 verses. Okay, but the guy who leaves, he's got nobody to ask, right? He's going to make his assumption and he won't be able to ask what happened after I left. That's why the Tanakh distinguishes between those. Rabba Rabba sent to Rava. So how do we? What's the answer? Like, how do you divide up this reading? The halacha is the rule that you skip backwards. And it's the middle one who skips back. So if you have 8 verses to read and you have to split it 3 ways, so the first guy reads 3, the second one goes back 1 and reads verses 3, 4, and 5, so he repeats 3, and the last one does 6, 7, 8. And that's in fact what we do on Rosh Chodesh, right? In that first section where we have where we want to fit in 3 readers. Yeah, we do skip backwards in the second, and it's only 8 verses. We skip backwards in the for the second person. Okay, so now we're done with that. Now back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said that if there's a Musaf prayer, I assume that this means the formal Musaf prayer, but actually, as we'll see, it means just additional prayers. Maybe not a formal Amida. But anyway, if there's an additional prayers, then there's more Torah readers. Okay. So a regular Monday or Thursday is 3, and the Rosh Chodesh, where there's a Musaf or a Tisha B'Av, we don't actually practice that way on Tisha B'Av, or the Mamados, where there's certainly additional prayers for rain. Then there's 4 Torah readers. So now the Gemara wants to know, what about the public fast? Is that 3 or 4? Rosh Chodesh Moed Karban Musaf Arba. Maybe it's only Rosh Chodesh and Chol Moed where there's an extra Musaf sacrifice in the temple, corresponding to which we have the Musaf prayer. Maybe that's what merits a 4th section to be read. But the public fast, true, there are extra prayers, but it's not like there was no sacrifice attached to it in the temple, and there's no Amida. So maybe that only gets 3. Or maybe but there are sure plenty of extra prayers, right? We're praying for a drought. That's the whole point. So maybe that merits the 4th Torah reader. Tashma, let's try and prove it. Brisa says, our Mishnah says actually, our Mishnah on Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed, you read 4. So it specifies which ones. Havatani Sibur Gimel. So since it didn't count the public fast as one of those exceptions, it must be that's not an exception. That's still 3. So the Gemara says no, but look at the beginning of the Mishnah. You have 3 sections on Mondays, Thursdays, and Shabbos afternoon. So that implies it doesn't list Tani Sibur there. It doesn't list the fast. So the fast must be different. It must Ha Tani Sibur Abba. That would put the public fast in the category of the 4. So we can't prove it from our Mishnah because our Mishnah didn't include Tani Sibur in either one of those. Tashma. So let's find another proof. The Rav Eagle Bavel Tani Sibur. Rav came to Bavel and it was a fast day. Kam Kara B'Sifra. So he got up and he read the Torah. Pasach Barich Chasim Lo Barich. He made a bracha at the beginning when he started, and he didn't make a bracha at the end. Presumably because at that time only the first and the last. Only the first reader made the opening bracha, and the last reader made the closing bracha. Not like our practice, which is everybody makes an opening and closing bracha. Okay, so he read first, so he opened with bracha. He didn't close with a bracha because there were more readers after him. Naful koli alma anapayu, and then when they got to the Tachnun prayer, when you fall on your face, Rav will nafal ape. Rav did not. So michte. Let's see. Rav Yisrael Kara. Which reading did Rav do? Rav was not a Kohen. He was not a Levi. He must have read the third portion. My tamachasum v'lavarich. So why would he not end with a bracha? Must be that the third aliyah is not the last one. There was somebody following him. Because the number 4 is coming after him. So the number 4 guy would make this closing bracha. So Gemara says, Lo Rav B'chane Kara. No, could be that Rav maybe there were only 3 portions, and Rav read the first one, the Kohen's portion. Daha Rav Huna Kari B'chane. Rav Huna would also read the Kohen's portion, even though he wasn't a Kohen. So there is a view in the Gemara that, like, the idea that the Kohen gets the first aliyah, that's just a tiebreaker, right? That's if you have 2 people who are of equal stature, but other than one of them is a Kohen and the other is not, so the Kohen gets precedence. But it's not that any old Kohen would precede a great scholar like Rav. No, that according to that, I mean that's not how we practice today. But it's possible that in this case Rav was reading the first aliyah, and that's why he opened with the bracha but did not close with a bracha. Even it could be there were only 3 aliyahs, so that's not a good proof whether there were 3 or 4 on a fast day. But the Gemara questions, especially on Rav Huna Kari B'chane. I understand why Rav Huna would read the first aliyah, the ha afilu Rav Ami Rav Asi Dechani Chashibe Adar Yisrael, because even when Rav Huna was in the presence of Rav Ami and Rav Asi, who were both Kohanim and were both very well respected scholars, Mechav Kaifu Leila Rav Huna, they would withdraw in favor of Rav Huna. Okay, so I understand why Rav Huna would be, Rav Huna was so great that even the great Kohanim, even the Kohanim who were great scholars, would take second spot to him. But Rav Ha'ika Shmuel Dechana Hava Udevarale, but Rav had a contemporary named Shmuel. Shmuel was a Kohen, and so why would and we're assuming for some reason that Shmuel was there too. There's a lot of people and a lot of communities in Bavel, but we figure if Rav came to Bavel, who's he going to visit? He's going to visit Shmuel. Okay, so it's fine to say Rav Huna took the Kohen position, even though he wasn't a Kohen, because he was acknowledged as a greater scholar than the Kohanim in town. But Rav and Shmuel are more or less on the same level, and Shmuel was a Kohen. So why would you say that Rav took the first Aliyah? Must be he took the third Aliyah. And this would indicate the fact that he didn't make a closing bracha, that there was another one, a fourth one to come. So my answer is no. Shmuel nami mechav habakayif leila Rav. Even Shmuel, who was a Kohen, he considered himself, he declined in favor of Rav. He considered Rav to be greater. For Rav, who do you have a lay kavod? It was Rav who was giving Shmuel the honor, right? The chiyavi lay b'fanav. When did Rav do that? When he was there in his presence, when Shmuel was in the shul. Shlo b'fanav lo avid. But maybe this was a case where Rav was in shul, Shmuel wasn't in shul. Maybe it wasn't a different town. Maybe Shmuel davened with a different minyan, or whatever. Rav had just arrived, and maybe Shmuel had davened earlier, whatever the reason. So maybe Shmuel wasn't there, and so it would make sense to say that Rav got the Kohen spot, got the first Aliyah, and that's why he didn't make a closing bracha. And this would actually make sense. The Rav B'chanikar, to say that Rav read the first Aliyah. If you think he read the third Aliyah, Lefanea my Tamabarich, then why did he make an opening bracha? Obviously, the fact that in the story, as recorded, he made the opening bracha and not the closing bracha, it must have been the first Aliyah, because the third guy doesn't make an opening bracha. He's the third guy, right? Why didn't we think of this before? So Gemara says no, lachar takana. Maybe it was after, there were stages, right? First, only the first guy made the opening bracha, and the last guy made the closing bracha. The next stage was everybody made an opening bracha, but only the last guy made the closing bracha. Or maybe we're at that stage. Okay, so that would explain why. Okay, we could have said that Rav got the third aliyah. That's why he made the opening bracha. And if he didn't make the closing bracha, it's because there was still a fourth aliyah to come. So wait, the Gemara says, well, if it's after we made everybody make the opening and closing bracha, why didn't everybody else make the closing bracha? Where Rav is there, so they might come late. Oh, so it's like, so if Rav is in town, everybody's going to come. People might come late because they don't know Rav is there. But once they come in and they see Rav is there, they're not going to leave early, because it would be, I don't know, they'd be self-conscious that Rav is there. I don't want to leave early. So that's
disrespectful. It's disrespectful.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fine to disrespect the Torah, but to disrespect Rav, nobody's going to do that.
The whole other story, right?
So, okay, so that's why it wouldn't apply. So that clearly there was a time where this rule is kind of fungible, right? It's not how we have it today, that we know exactly the procedure. It's like, under the circumstances, if you know that everybody's going to stay, then only the last guy can make the closing bracha, because nobody's going to leave early and think they didn't make a closing bracha. Kashma. Okay, so we still don't know the answer to our question. I forgot already, what question are we dealing with? The question of how many aliyahs on the fourth on the public fast, 3 or 4. Zaklal, this is the rule. If there's a day which people are not supposed to work, no, I'm sorry. If it's a day that by staying longer in shul you would be losing out on work time. So we're the practice to be sensitive to people who have to go out and earn a living. Don't schlep out the services. So having extra Torah reading would make people have to stay longer. So if it's a regular work day like Monday and Thursday, so no adding on a fourth section. So Kigon. So for example, Tani Sibur Tisha B'Av, a public fast day, or Tisha B'Av, where you can work, right? So don't hold people in the synagogue longer when they need to go to work. So Kohen Shlosha, then you only read 3. But if people are anyway not working, and so they're staying in shul, they're not gonna have to give up on their making a living. Kigon, for example, Rosh Chodeshim v'Chol Moed, Rosh Chodesh, which was a day in which it was customary not to work, and Chol Moed, where it's probably a stronger custom not to work. Karin Dalet. then you can call 4 people because people have more leisure time. Shmami, that's a good proof that okay, public fast, it's a work day, so you only read 3. Rav Ashi says, we have a different Mishnah, a different tradition. Our Mishnah has the rule that if there's a Musaf and it's not a holiday, so on a formal holiday, Pesach, the Yom Tov of Pesach or Shavuos or Sukkot, you read 5, right? A regular day, a weekday, you read 3. When do you read 4? If there is a Musaf, an extra prayer. So what is that including? Lav doesn't that include the fast days, right? What other day would be that there is a day where there is extra prayers, but it's not a Yom Tov? That would be the fast days. Rav Ashi must nisinami. But wait, according to Rav Ashi, what about our Mishnah? Lo Tanakam of Lo Rabbi Yossi. Who's our Mishnah like? It's neither like the Tanakam or Rabbi Yossi in this following Brisa. Tanya, Chol Yos B'Sheni B'Chamishi. If Tisha B'Av falls on Monday or Thursday, Karin Gimel Umaftir Echad. Then you read 3. There are 3 readers, and the third one reads from the prophets. Right? B'Shlishu Brisa Haftarah. B'Shlishu Revi. If Tisha B'Av falls on a Tuesday or Wednesday, Kari Echad Umaftir Echad. Then you only have 1 reader of the Torah, and that person reads the Haftarah. Rabbi Yossi says, the Olim Karin Gimel After Echad. It doesn't matter what day of the week it is. You read Tisha B'Av. You read 3 sections from the Torah, and the last one reads the Haftarah. Ve'ala Kasha Zaklal. But what we just said in the name of Rav Ashi, that Rav Ashi, who said the rule is Yom Sheish B'Mus, that Tisha B'Av would be 4 readers, wouldn't go like this. That wouldn't accord with this brisa at all, because this brisa said either 1 or 3 on Tisha B'Av. Who says 4? Where do you get that from? Where it says so the exception of days that that you don't work, but is not a Yom Tov, that it comes to include Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed when you have 4 people, not public fast. So but that was said explicitly. Rosh Chodesh Moed Karin Arba. That source said it said explicitly Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed you read 4. So what's the purpose of the general rule? If the general rule days that there is no work for people, if that's the rule, that's already stated explicitly, the Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed. So it would appear that rule is coming to include the that you read 4 on a Tani Sibur, on a fast day. So Gemara says Simon Ba'al Meyayiv. No, it's just giving you a rule, like a way to remember it, a mnemonic, if you will. So it's not the rule is not trying to include anything else that hasn't been stated. It's just giving you a memory aid to say, why Rosh Chodesh, if you want to remember why Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed you read 4, it's because people don't have to go to work, so they have more time. So you shouldn't say that Yom Tov and Chol Hamoed have the same status, Ella, because they have, since they're both reading 4. This is the rule called the Tafilei Milsa Mechavre Tafilei Gavre Yisera. Any day that is has some additional intensity, then you have an extra Torah reading. So in what way are Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed both more intense than a regular day, Monday or Thursday? Because there's extra prayers, right, or the extra sacrifice or whatever. So that's why, not in other ways, but because they have an up on a weekday in the sense that there's this Musaf. And then Yom Tov, the Asr Basiyas Malacha Chamisha, and Yom Tov has more intensity than Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed, because you're not allowed to you can't do Malacha. You can't, you have all the rules of what you can't do. Yom Kippurim, Danush Kares Shisha. Yom Kippur is another peg higher, because the punishment is not just a death by stoning, as it would be on I can't remember. but Yom Kippur has a more intense. It has more intensity because the punishment is kares, being cut off for breaking the rules of Yom Kippur. And Shabbos ikarisu skila shiva. And Shabbos is even more uh, strict or more intense than Yom Kippur because the punishment for desecrating Shabbos is even greater than that of Yom Kippur, and that you get the punishment of being stoned to death by the court, right? Which is considered more intense than punishment by God. Okay, so we seem to have that all sorted out. Gufa. So we said before, Rav equal Bavel Tanisifra. We had the story that Rav got to Bavel and it was a fast day. Kamkar B'Sifra, he started to read the Torah. Pasach Barich, Chasam LeBarich. He made the bracha, the opening bracha, not the closing bracha. Nafal Kuli Almal Payu, V'Rav Nafal Al Ante. And then we got to the part where everybody in the Tachnun prayer fell on their faces and Rav did not. Why not? My time Rav Nafal Ape. Why not? Rizpan Shal Abanim Hasas. Where it says because there was a stone floor of Vitanya. So this is. If you this has to do with you may have observed that some people on Yom Kippur, when we go on our knees and prostrate ourselves, some people will put like a mat or a cloth or whatever so that they're not directly on the floor. Okay, this is relevant here because it was a stone floor. So what? V'tanya, we have a brisa. Evan maskislo titnu bar tzechem lishachav el in discussing idolatry and the prohibition against idolatry, the Torah says you shouldn't put a stone covering on your land to bow on it. So allow so you can't do this in the country, right? In the countryside, but what it implies is that this is something you only do in the temple. In the temple with the stone floor, which has a stone floor, you that's where you can bow on, where you can prostrate yourselves. Kedula, like Ula said, Ula says this only applies to a stone floor, the prohibition against bowing down. So that's why it's not universally practiced, because generally speaking, we don't have stone floors, and even if we do, there's a carpet on them, right? Okay, so Rav didn't want to prostrate himself on the stone floor. What about everybody else, right? Why is everybody else doing it? Okay, because maybe it was a dirt floor. It wasn't an elaborate shul, and only the place where Rav was, presumably Rav was standing at the front there. He was in the front of everybody. Maybe just at the front they had a stone floor. So everybody else is on dirt, right, or whatever. And only Rav is in front of the stone floor. That's why he didn't bend down and everybody else did. So what do you have to stand over there for, right? Rav could have gone to where everybody else was standing and where it was not a stone floor. And I didn't want to trouble everybody, because when Rav started walking toward the back, everybody would be a commotion, everybody would stand up and make way and whatever. He didn't want to disturb the proceedings, so he stayed where he was, and he didn't prostrate himself. Or you could say Rav when Rav would prostrate himself, it would be like he'd be fully stretched out. Okay, he'd be like his face to the floor, his arms stretched out, his feet stretched out, right? None of this like bowing in your little pew and kind of huddling there. No, he would really stretch himself out, and that is what is prohibited. As Ula said, Ula said, when is the Torah prohibiting? Just this complete stretching out, but a kneeling or bowing to the floor, even if the stone floor, is fine. So everybody else is just doing this kind of semi bow, and they're fine. But Rav's custom was to do the full stretch, and that is not permitted on the stone floor, and that's why he didn't do it. So where it says okay, so Rav is a stone floor, so let him do the halfway bow. Like, so don't do the full thing. Why didn't he do anything? Rav, that was his custom. He didn't want to change his custom. His custom was where I daven, it's not a stone floor, and I do the full stretch. I'm not going to give up the full. I'm not going to do a half stretch. That's nothing to me. Just so if there's a stone floor, I'm not going to do it at all. Or you could say, Adam Chashuv Shanei Kid Rabbi Elazar. It's different if you're an important or a prominent person. Rabbi Elazar said, "Ein adam chashuv rashai lipa apanav elim kein nana." Like if you're Rav, if you're a great scholar, if you're a great tzaddik or whatever, like don't go ahead and do this full prostration unless you're pretty sure that your prayers are going to be answered, because then it looks bad. Like you really go all out and symbolically by stretching out, and then nothing happens, so you don't look so good. It'd be Yeshua ben Nun, as we find in the case of Joshua. You see, verses Vayomer Hashem El Yoshua Kumlach. God said to Yeshua, "Get up. Why are you falling on your face?" Like this is after a military defeat, and Yeshua is like he prostrates himself before God. Like, what's going on? You promised we were going to be victorious, and look what happened. And God says, get up. Why are you falling on your face? It's like. So God is saying to him, like, clearly you don't know what's going on here. Why, it turns out that the reason they lost an eye was due to someone having violated the cherem of the prohibition of taking from the booty of the previous victory. So God says to Yeshua, you clearly don't know what's going on here. Don't be prostrating yourself because you're not going to be answered, since you don't know what the real problem is. Okay. Rabbi's talk. Kila alapayim. So you have these two verbs that have to do with bowing. Vayikod, vayishtachu. All right. So there's two verbs. The root kuf dalad hey kida or vayikod means alapayim, means on your face. Shenemar vatikod bashava apayim aretz. When it uses that verb, when Bathsheba bows to David, it uses the word vatikod. And it says her face to the ground. She bowed with her face to the ground. Kriya, another verb which is kneeling. Kriya, al birkaim. That means on the knees. Mikroa al birkav. This is referring to I can't remember, when somebody got up. I think it was David got up from bowing on his knees, and uses the word mikroa, uses that verb. So that means kneeling. Hishtachava, and this the root shin taf chas lishtachavos, to bow down, is pisha rang reglaim. That means the full stretch, full prostration. When Jacob comments on Joseph's dream, he says, "Am I and your mother and your brothers all going to come and bow down to you to the ground?" To the ground means the full full prostration. Okay, so Levi achve kida kame derabi. Levi demonstrated the kida. This how do you do the bowing? That's called kida before Rabbi Ve'itla, and he became lame from it. Like he was doing it. So you're since it's not a full bowing, there's a lot of strain involved in kind of hovering between a full bow and being upright. So he put so much strain on his leg that he became lame. Is that what caused him to become lame? Elazar says, a person shouldn't complain to God, because there was a great person who complained too much to God, and he became lame. And who was that? Levi. So why did Levi become lame? Not because he was bowing too much, because he was complaining too much. So Gemara says, it's really both. It's because he complained too much, and so maybe you could say that the moral cause, I guess, was that he complained too much, and the proximate physical thing that brought it about was the bowing too much. Rav Chia said, "Chazino lehula Abaye, I saw Abaye v'Rabba the matzle atzluye." They leaned, right? They didn't bow all the way down. They didn't stay upright. They kind of leaned, and that's I guess the source of our practice. You'll see people in shul when they do tachnun, they kind of put their head on their hand like that. They're kind of partway bowing, and that's what we practice. Okay, we'll pick up here tomorrow, big top of 23,
Thank you, Dov. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
and be well.